If you've been struggling with addiction, it's likely you've been trying to overpower something that doesn't live on the surface. Addiction doesn't just live in your body, it lives in your energy, it lives in your aura, your frequency, your subconscious mind. And until you learn how to address it on all three planes of existence, mental, physical, and spiritual, it will keep finding ways to return. You can't out-hustle your energy. You can do everything right physically, follow every step, every program, every detox, but if that addiction still lives as a vibration in your field, it will eventually pull you back into alignment with it. That's why the real battle isn't with the addiction itself, it's with the invisible force behind it. See, addiction is not just a habit, it's an energetic entity, a blind intelligence that serves by attaching itself to a void within you. It whispers the illusion that something outside of you, a drug, a person, a scroll, a substance, can fix what you're missing inside. But the truth is, until you understand how your perception creates your projection and how vibration creates reality, you will keep fighting shadows, and they'll keep on winning. This is where science meets the soul, where quantum principles like resonance, coherence, and emotional imprinting aren't just theory, they're your blueprint for freedom. See, this isn't about willpower, it's about energetic sovereignty. And if you're ready, I'll show you how to get it back once and for all. Part 1, the three planes of reality and why you can't outrun your frequency. The universe operates on three planes: the mental, the spiritual, and the physical. Every experience you've had, every pattern, every behavior, every addiction exists across all three planes of existence. But most people only try to solve their problems on one level, being the physical. They change their routines, swap substances, build new habits, try new tools, but the addiction remains persistent. Why? Because they're still vibrating at the same frequency that created the problem in the first place. You cannot outrun your frequency. You cannot out-discipline it, out-hustle it, or hide from it in your schedule. If the frequency of addiction still exists in your mental field and your spiritual body, it will eventually show up in your physical reality, no matter how long you try to avoid it. It's like trying to mop up water from a leaky pipe without fixing the pipe itself. The leak isn't random, it's coming from a source, and that source is inside. Now understand this. Addiction on a metaphysical level is not just a compulsion. It's not even just a habit. It is a frequency, a pattern of energy that has built momentum over time. It's a blind intelligence, an entity that survives by anchoring itself to a void within you. And unless that void is filled with something real, something internal, something self-generated, that entity will keep whispering promises. Do this, take this, watch this, escape here. And like clockwork, you'll feel the pull and eventually give into it. This is why understanding addiction only on the surface doesn't work. It's why you keep on relapsing. It's why months of effort can collapse in a moment, because the cause still exists in the field, mentally and spiritually. And you're only treating the symptoms in the physical. You're trying to hack reality while ignoring the code behind it. Everything that exists physically must first exist vibrationally. Vibration becomes frequency. Frequency then becomes reality. So if you want to break free, the process starts not with doing, but with being. Being someone who is no longer ruled by that frequency. Being someone who reclaims the energy that addiction once fed off of. And to do that, we have to go to the origin, not just of the behavior, but of the wound. Part 2, addiction as an entity and the illusion of external salvation. Addiction is not just a bad habit. It's not just about willpower or lack of discipline. Addiction is an entity, a living vibrational intelligence, and it survives by feeding off of an internal void. It doesn't hate you. It's not trying to destroy you out of malice. It simply wants one thing, and that is to exist. And it will do whatever it must to keep on existing, even if that means convincing you to destroy yourself in the process. Now, where most people get lost is they think the addiction is about the drug, the behavior, the object, and that's the trap. The addiction doesn't live in the cigarette or the bottle or the screen or the bud. The addiction lives in your need for those things to soothe something inside you, something unresolved, something unacknowledged. It lives and thrives in the void that you created internally. That void is not random, it's a wound, a point of emotional fragmentation, born from a moment where your needs weren't met, or your safety was taken, or your worth was questioned. And because that void was never truly filled, your psyche learned to chase external solutions to regulate your internal pain. That is the game. You don't crave the substance, you crave the feeling that you believe the substance will give you. And the addiction, as an entity, reinforces that belief every time you reach for it. It whispers, this will make it better, this will make you feel whole, just one more time. That one more time phrase is the one. But that whisper is a lie wrapped in comfort, because once it has your attention, the entity begins feeding. And the more it feeds, the stronger it gets. This is the illusion of external salvation, that something outside of you can fix what's broken inside. But the universe doesn't work that way, it never has. The mirror won't smile until you do. Reality cannot reflect peace until peace is established within. And the most dangerous part of addiction is that it hijacks this universal truth and bends it against you. Because addiction doesn't just feed on action, it feeds on emotion, shame, guilt, regret. The pain you feel after the behavior, that spiral, is the glue that keeps the entity attached to you. Every time you beat yourself up, you strengthen the frequency. Every time you call yourself weak or hopeless, you're not just describing reality, you are actively creating it. That's how the metaphysical then becomes physical. So this is your first power move, is separate yourself from the addiction. Not just in theory, but in identity. Stop calling it your addiction because it's only an addiction. It doesn't belong to you. It's just taking up space inside you. But that starts with awareness, and awareness requires truth. You have to see addiction for what it really is, an entity born of a void, feeding off the illusion that something external can fix something internal. And when you can see the lie, you can then break the spell. Part 3. The root of the void and the path to transmutation. Every addiction is attached to a specific void, and every void is born from a moment. Maybe it was something someone said, maybe it was the way they looked at you, maybe it was years of silence, rejection, or being invisible in a world that demanded you perform while ignoring your pain. Whatever it was, it imprinted onto you. It fragmented your sense of wholeness, and the mind, trying to survive, reached for whatever it could to patch the wound. That patch became a pattern. That pattern became a craving, and that craving became your addiction. And to be precise, the addiction itself is a symptom, and the void is the cause. That's where the work begins, not with the behavior, but with the origin. And the only way to begin healing it is to trace the emotional fingerprint of that addiction all the way back to its first spark. What was the first moment you felt unloved or unwanted, unworthy? What is the emotion at the core of your compulsion? Because here's the metaphysical law. Energy seeks resolution, and the emotional void that lives within you is not just a wound, it's a frequency. Frequencies are patterns of energy, and those patterns dictate everything. Your thoughts, your instincts, your urges, your perception of what's possible. Until that void is understood and faced. Not escaped, not numbed, or not distracted from. You will unconsciously recreate circumstances that allow the addiction to survive. This is why willpower alone consistently fails, because you're trying to fight an emotional entity with physical force, but the spiritual plane overrides the physical one. And if the void is still vibrating at the frequency of I am not enough, then no amount of detox, rehab, or productivity will ever feel like freedom. because you're still haunted by the echo of that original frequency. So what do then? You re-enter the void, not as the broken version of yourself who first experienced it, but as the aware, conscious observer that you are today. You meet the origin point with presence, not to relive the pain, but to rewrite the story. Because the subconscious mind doesn't know time, it only knows feeling. And if you can give it a new emotional truth, if you can flood that memory with the frequency of love, worth, or acceptance, then the spell begins to break. And this is true transmutation. You are not here to escape your pain, you are here to alchemize it. And the most sacred work you will ever do in this life is to become the source of what you've been seeking externally. That is the real path to liberation. You fill the void not by running from it, but by becoming what it needed in the first place. Part 4. Decoding the entity. Addiction as a blind intelligence. Now that we've identified the void, we need to confront the entity that's been feeding off it. Addiction itself. Not as a habit, not as a chemical dependency, not as some character flaw, but as an entity, a blind intelligence, one that doesn't hate you, one that doesn't love you either though. It simply wants to exist. And to exist, it needs you. It needs your attention, it needs your energy, and your belief in it, your rituals. It thrives on your cycles. It has no power unless you feed it. And this is the uncomfortable truth, is addiction has survived in your life because you've helped it survive. Not consciously, no. Not because you wanted to, but because you mistook its voice for your own. That whisper in your mind that tells you just one more time, or you're not strong enough, or you've already messed up, so what's the point? That's not your voice. That's the entity impersonating you. And because it uses your tone, your memory, your language, you then believe in it because you believe that this is you speaking, but it is not. This is why detachment is not just mental, it's energetic. You have to begin to create separation between your consciousness and the programming of the addiction. You do that through observation without identification. Every time the urge rises up, instead of following it, you just watch it. That's the frequency, that's the entity trying to survive. You don't fight it because fighting gives it power. You don't fear it because fear makes it stick. You just witness it. And in that witnessing, you reclaim your position as the creator, not the captive. And remember this, addiction is not just about dopamine or brain chemistry. It's about unresolved energy, unintegrated emotion. It's an unconscious loop that needs your agreement to stay alive. Break the agreement. Stop calling it your addiction because it is not yours. It's something you've been carrying, and anything carried can be put down. But you can't just remove an entity, you have to replace it. You don't just rip something out of your psyche and leave a gap. The universe doesn't work in vacuums. The void must be filled. And the good news is, you are the only one who can fill it properly. With self-sourced love, with real nourishment, with frequency-aligned energy that actually restores instead of depleting. When you stop relating to the addiction as a battle and begin to see it as a misdirected frequency, you become the frequency keeper. You become the conductor of your emotional and spiritual field. You start curating your inputs, your self-talk, your rituals, your silence. You become dangerous to anything that once fed on your confusion. And that is when your healing becomes inevitable. Because the addiction can't survive through clarity. It cannot survive through self-awareness. And it damn sure can't survive you loving yourself in the places where it used to hide. Part 5. Emotional alchemy and transmuting the void. By now, we've exposed the addiction for what it is. A parasitic frequency masquerading as your own voice, rooted in a void you didn't ask for. But knowledge alone isn't power. Transmutation is power. And transmutation only happens when emotion becomes alchemy. When you stop trying to escape your void and finally sit with it, learn from it, and reprogram the memory it was born from. Every addiction is just a messenger in disguise. And the message has been screaming beneath the chaos is something inside you still believes you're incomplete. And so the void keeps opening and the addiction keeps promising. If you do this, you'll feel whole again. But you never do. Not for long at least, because no external frequency can fill an internal fracture. So what you do instead is you go back. Not with your body, but with your awareness. You return to the moment the void was formed. Maybe it was in your childhood, maybe it was from a heartbreak or a low point in life, a failure that convinced you that you were unworthy. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. You just locate it, not to relive it, but to rewrite that experience. And by rewriting that experience, you are transmuting the void. You are doing emotional alchemy. In the meditative state, fully relaxed, fully present, you bring that memory to the surface, and instead of letting it play the same script, you alter the script. If the wound was rejection, you imagine deep acceptance. If it was neglect, you imagine unconditional love, not from anyone else, but from yourself, from your future self, from your higher self, from the version of you that's already whole. And this isn't just visualization, this is deep quantum work. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, which means you can implant a new energetic blueprint. You're not lying to yourself, you're correcting a distortion. You're filling the void with the exact frequency it's always longed for. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The emotional signature of that rewritten memory is what begins to reprogram the vibration of your life. You literally rewire your emotional body. Your energetic baseline changes. And the more often you revisit that memory and feed it the new frequency of love, peace, and self-empowerment, the weaker the addiction becomes. Because now the void has been filled, authentically and permanently from within. From source. This is what most healing systems miss. They try to cut the weed without pulling the root. But we don't cut, we alchemize. We don't numb the pain, we digest it. We don't run from the dark, we bring light in. And when that light hits the core wound, not only does the addiction fade, but the need for it dissolves. And you realize the only thing that's ever been missing was you. In conclusion, the truth should be undeniable. Addiction was never about the substance. It was never about the habit or the craving. It was always about frequency. A pattern that took root in the moment when your nervous system believed something was missing. A void, and everything you've done since has either been a subconscious attempt to escape that void or to fill it with something outside of yourself. But the most powerful thing you can realize, the truth that quantum physics, metaphysics, and spiritual law all agree on is this, is that reality does not shape you, you shape your reality. And that means the addiction was never bigger than you, it was never stronger than you, it was never in control of you, it just convinced you to forget who you were. Once you align your perception, your emotional state, and your internal frequency, you no longer need to fight the addiction. It loses its grip because it loses your belief. It loses your thought energy. And when belief is withdrawn, energy dissipates. That's how you use the universe to overcome addiction. Not through struggle, but through alignment. Not by force, but by resonance. You don't need to wait for the future to feel free. You need to feel free right now and let reality catch up to your feeling. That's the art, that's the metaphysical law. And if you can do that, not just once, but consistently, you don't recover, you transcend. So now, the only question is, who are you going to be from this point forward? Are you still someone trying to quit? Or are you someone who's already free and just letting your new reality catch up to your new frequency? If this video spoke to you, and it spoke to something deeper within you, don't just keep it in your head. Act on it. Rewatch the parts that hit the hardest. Journal your realizations and start integrating today. If you're serious about transforming your life from the inside out, make sure to subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs it. We're not just building habits here, we're building new worlds.